Welcome back to the What's Your One More podcast, where we help you grow your financial wealth and become a better leader. Today, I'm sitting with one of my standing co-hosts, Alex Stewart of the Market Distillery. Thanks for joining me again today.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. We've kind of been doing a run here of quite a bit of episodes, but there's so much to talk about. And in a lot of these episodes, we've been getting some comments about why is real estate, why do you guys keep proing real estate so much? I understand there might be a connection in the banking world, but why are you just so asphyxiated on real estate when there's so many other investment models out there, whether it's the equities market, which some of our listeners have said we've been a little down on here, but we have our reasons, which we're going to put to the side for today. Yep. And also we've even had some questions about crypto in there. And I think we wanted to take a moment today to discuss, the secrets behind real estate, or some of the hidden gems behind real estate, and really just talk about some principles that maybe we've adopted, but more importantly, we were taught and learned at a young age that I think were just impressionable on us that, has kind of expanded to a whole nother conversation, which I think, from an audience standpoint, you're going to see us do some other series on, but we kind of wanted to start with just some fundamentals and some things that we thought maybe we should use as building blocks.
Yeah.
Maybe just talk about for a minute.
Yeah. Well, so we both have rental properties. We're
Correct.
Investors in real estate. How'd you get into that? Why don't we start with that? Because I think that story is interesting.
Well, I think, for anyone that's young and, I owned my first home at a pretty young age there. I think it was 23 years old. And at the time when I got that was young. Today, that's, young even by the standards of a first-time home buyer at 32. But I bought my first home and it wasn't my forever home. But the reality was I was always taught that you buy a home and you live in it, and then you depart and you go to another home, you maintain that one. And I think you have an acronym. What is that called?
House hacking.
House hacking. That's it. And so, the reality was that's kind of how I got started.
Cool.
And just thought of it manifested from there. Right?
And you've got how many houses now?
4.
Okay. And your houses are mostly
in Nashville, Tennessee, Franklin, Tennessee area. I have my primary here in Jacksonville, and and I think that also, my father-in-law was also a big role in that as a mentor, and he owns quite a bit of homes as well. So that was kind of one of the major pushes of getting me to understand that, if you may. Is
there anything he told you or any sort of influential argument that got you into it?
Yeah, one of the things he always taught me was that, the thing about buying a rental property that sometimes gets overlooked or analyzed, way too much is that, I don't know if I'm getting a deal. I want to get a deal, the price, I want to make sure I got it, the best deal. And then I want to make sure I get the best interest rate. And, you get hung up on it because I just think it's just part of who we are. We all want to be a winner, if you may. And one of the principles he taught me was, don't worry about the price and don't worry about the rate. As long as it cash flows, it will always cash flow at what you got that loan at, because rents don't go down. They only go up. And, he's right. Because even on those rental properties that I owned in 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, rent didn't go down. It maintained, but it didn't go down. And to his point, it does go up.
Yeah, and that's hard to apply necessarily when you're buying a house to live in that's your first house. But in general, we both know that if you buy something and you live in it for a few years, that investment usually pans out, because unlike some other investments that are a little shorter term, real estate, that's a long-term investment for most people.
Yeah, so let's break it down. When you look at real estate, if I had envision as a listener, I have a whiteboard in front of me here, and I'm going to draw 3 circles or 3 buckets, and maybe we'll add a 4th one. But the reality is, one would be cash, cash that you have on hand, and that's your cash to live your lifestyle, to pay bills, enjoy. And then you've got an equities bucket. And
inside stocks, right?
Exactly. Inside that equities could be stocks. It could be, mutual funds.
Yep.
It could be ETFs, all sitting right there. Anything that you can go buy online through a trade platform, minus crypto, that's right there. Then you got a real estate bucket or circle. And there was an adage one time that it should be, 20, 40, 40, right? 20 in cash, 40 in equity, 40 in real estate. And then that 4th bucket, depending on what part of the audience you want to, lean towards as an audience member, crypto, right? And this is a 4th bucket, but you can put your own, percentages and where you would like to be, more diverse than others. But what we have found is this, and I'm going to spark, in this particular case, I want to kind of talk towards up-and-coming homeowners or people that are looking to buy that first home, or people that may be disgruntled, and I think we look at the stock market and, depending, depending where you are in your life, whether, you heard this in college or you just read about it, you always hear that story of how Warren Buffett started, with a very small amount.
Sure.
And then it just, the compounding effect and it grew and how he got there. But let's face it, he even deemed a term arbitrage situations, arbitrage moments, meaning there are going to be few moments in time where you're going to have the opportunity to take advantage of the market's woes and grow your money and your wealth exponentially.
Is this the whole invest when people are fearful and not when they're greedy? Or
I think for him, that's just a general investment principle.
Okay.
From what I understand. Arbitrage situations would be a market crash and then buying in and putting more into that market crash. The most recent example of that we would have seen would have been in March of 2020 when the equity market dipped significantly into the teens. And people that had money on the sidelines that said, okay, I recognize this is an arbitrage situation. When you see a stock like, Apple drop down like it did, just because it didn't do anything wrong and it's sitting on billions of dollars of cash reserves, people front load and jump into that, and then you watch it jump all the way back up. That's an arbitrage situation.
So it's almost like something has been an overreaction.
That's correct.
Right. Okay.
The one past that would have been, 9/11 was another example. When that happened, the stock market suffered significant, losses on fear alone, and rightfully so. But the airlines and the transportation sector suffered the most.
Yeah.
And you saw a stock like FedEx drop all the way down, way down. And people that front loaded and bought back into that's an arbitrage situation. They've seen it come back.
Okay.
So those are hard to come by, and then there's the investment principle that the stock market's going to, on average anywhere from 6 to 7% on average, which is a great tool. You should have some money in that. I'm not saying that. But I think what you and I wanted to talk about today was the question that we keep getting online and from our audience is why real estate? You guys are continuing to harp on that. And what we want to talk about was the power of real estate and the leverage of real estate.
Sure.
And so I think for us, the simple principle of that is let's just start from being a basic homeowner, right?
Right.
And I think depending on what market you live in, meaning what state you live in, there's always programs that are available for first-time homeowners to get in with little to no money down.
Right.
So let's lead with that.
Yeah,
There's
the government.
quite a few of them.
Right. The government traditionally has offered assistance when it comes to down payment because when they look at the stats and they look at, what's going on in the economy, we know that first-time buyers have credit. We know that first-time buyers have a job and have income coming in. What we know they don't have is those savings built up to be able to afford that down payment. So that's why these down payment assistance programs are really the way that first-time buyers get help. It's not a monthly payment assistance program. It's a down payment assistance program.
Right. And so, let's imagine you're a homeowner. You get into one of these programs, but let's assume your state doesn't have one, right? And you have to go the FHA route because in this case, that's the loan that would allow you to typically put the least amount down at 3.5. There are some conventional programs at 3, but let's just assume we're talking about FHA here. Let's assume you're looking at, we'll tackle our market because we know off the top of our head here, the first-time average home price is around $400,000, right?
Yeah, maybe 350.
Maybe 350, right? Okay, so 3.5%.
Easy math.
Easy math, right? Easy math. We don't have a calculator in front of us, but let's say $400,000 at 3.5, is going to be roughly what, $14,000?
Right.
So you, as a first-time home buyer, put $14,000 plus closing costs if you can't get a seller to pay it for you. And in this market, that's questionable at best. You put $14,000 plus closing costs. So let's say, what would that be? What do you think that total is on that? Total?
I think you're looking at somewhere around 6% total, right?
Yeah. So 6% total. So 6% total on what, $24,000?
Yeah.
Okay. So you got $24,000 involved in this first-time home at $400,000. Now, again, we realize $400,000 may be a reach for a first-time home buyer, but work with us here on the simple math, right? Now, let's say that property goes up. Now, let's use a modest approach, right? Let's say that property went up 3%. 3%. Again, simple math, $12,000.
Right.
You put $24,000 in.
And you made
$12,000.
Right.
Alex, what's the return on investment?
That's a 50% increase.
That's a 50% increase on the money that you put in. Now, I'm going to challenge a lot of people. can you go make 50% on another investment that carries less risk than real estate in the market today?
Yeah, but Quentin, I thought the market was going to crash.
Well, clearly we've seen that hasn't happened yet. And, and to take a minute to pull up a chart here, because I figured we would talk about this here. When we take a look at, going back to 1942.
Right.
I'm looking at, so what is that, 81 years?
Something like that,
okay.
yeah.
1942. There has been 7 years, only 7 years of negative return on real estate. 2 of those 7 are negative 1%.
Yeah,
That's flat, by the way.
So we're measuring, just to clarify, January to December of each year, and we're saying how much did real estate go up from January to December, or how much did it go down? And there's only 7 times it actually went down
in 81 years.
Yeah, so you finished the year at a lower price than where you started the year.
And
right?
2 of those 7 were 1% loss. That's basically flat.
Yeah.
That's flat, right?
Yep.
So when we look at that, that's not a bad place to be.
Which the stock market, if I'm not mistaken, is 2/3 up, 1/3 down.
Correct.
I think that's the number
Seems to be
that
a rule of
typically
thumb,
comes
right.
out is 1/3 of the years you're going to have a decline. And a decline in the stock market, you're talking about 10, 20%, right? I mean, it's a much bigger swing.
Yeah, and the data source on this is the Case-Shillinger Index, right? Which is considered like the gold standard of home appreciation.
It's measuring national home prices.
Yeah, but in doing such, what I see here is an opportunity, and I see an opportunity of 71 to 72 years of 73 to 74 years of success.
Right.
Hard to argue with, right?
Sure.
And so when you look at a 50% return on investment, in this particular example that we use, I look at this and I'm like, okay, yes, you should have your 401ks if your company offers it, especially if they're matching. Yes, you should have some money in equities, because it's a good diversification, but you should have a good chunk in real estate.
Yeah.
And so when I take a look at that, the next example is I think, okay, I bought that first home.
Yep.
Alex, how long do I have to live in that first home before I decide to go, you know what? Maybe I want to go buy another home that's, I've outgrown this one.
Right.
Lifestyle change. Maybe I'm looking to get married. Maybe I was married. Now we're going to have a new addition to the family. I need more space. How long do I have to live in that primary before I make that move?
Yeah, I think a general rule of thumb is about a year, right?
About a year,
if you lived in it 6 months and life changed, truly, if you bought it and lived in it 2 months and life changed, say you got pregnant and had a baby,
right.
It's not like they're going to necessarily come and say, oh, no, you can't buy another house per se.
Right.
But in general, I would say you should plan on, hey, I'm going to live there for a year,
right.
And then we're going to plan on trying to move on to the next thing or the next house,
right? And so in this example, you move on to the next phase of life. You buy a new primary residence, right? You're checking the boxes as far as proximity, lifestyle change, where that property is going to be located from the property you owned. All of a sudden, you're buying another home as a primary residence, leveraging the home that you're departing now as a rental property.
Yep.
You now have a rental, and now you're getting into another home with little to no down payment again.
Correct. Yeah. Compared to I think the assumption is you need 20% down to buy an investment property. But this is a strategy that lets people get in there.
This is that house hacking you're talking
Exactly. Yeah. You are basically continuing to buy primary residences. And we see this, what I love is we see this in the VA community a lot. The military, service members will get stationed here, buy a house, and then get stationed there, buy a house, and they just collect houses along their journey, and they're able to do it with very few dollars down. And really, if you're a first-time buyer, you get into that first one with the first-time buyer program. Yeah, you'll have to deal with that first-time buyer program when you move on, but it's a way to get in the game first.
Right.
There's lots of strategies of how to handle that, but it is something where stock investing I think is very popular because with $100 you can get in, right? That's not the same with a house. With a house,
right?
You're it is a little bit of a bigger buildup, but once you're in, that's the hardest one is the first one, and then you have this thing where either you can sell it and use that money to buy more things, more houses, or you can keep it and rent it, and it creates a lot of flexibility. But if you're not in the game, you don't get any of the benefit.
Let's go back to the very beginning of the conversation where we talked about the fact that you can get into some of these homes with little to no money down. If I'm a new buyer, if I'm of a generation that's like, man, being a homeowner is tough because number one, I can't find the property I want, because I have this picture in my head of what my first property, what I want it to be, right?
Sure.
And I think that's another thing. We treat we treat properties as almost like it's a car, like it has to be perfect, it has to be brand new the way that I want it.
It's a reflection of you, right?
That's correct, reflection of me. Instead of thinking about it as a potential asset when I leave it. Because when I live in it and I own it, it's a liability, because really I'm not making income off of it yet, right?
Yeah. Well, that was some of the best advice I got was when you buy your first house, you think about it as, will this be a good rental property?
Correct.
And even if it's not a good rental property, what that does for you is it sets you up to where you've got a lot of options when you want to leave.
Yeah.
If you buy this super unique house that nobody would ever rent because either it's really big or it's in this weird location or whatever,
right,
it's going to be very difficult to move on from that in some certain circumstances. But if it is something where you're buying a 2-2 or a 3-2 and it is in a neighborhood and, those are great rentals and you're going to easily be able to move on from that when the time comes.
Absolutely. So conversations I'm having with my kids right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get them to get their head around, and I can't wait to share some of this stuff later on, but trying to get their head around your first home. It's not your forever home. Highly unlikely. Now there's possibilities, but highly unlikely. So you're buying it to depart it, to turn it into an investment. While you live in it, again, it's not an investment, it's a liability, but you're treating it as a future asset because you're going to keep it.
Right.
And so maybe you don't get the home that you want right away. Maybe you don't get the fourth bedroom that you wanted. Maybe it doesn't have, a pool, or maybe it doesn't have the features that you want. Good. It's not good. You don't want all that anyways for an investment property.
No, you don't.
You don't want that, so move on down. And I think that just trying to get the ideology of leveraging real estate down the road to become a great asset tool, because here's why. As you're renting that home, now remember, we just discussed earlier, let's go back to that scenario. $400,000. You put $24,000 into it. The first year it went up 3%. That's a 50% increase on return on your investment. 50%, right?
Right.
What happens if that home goes up 5%?
Right. It's even bigger.
It's even bigger. We're almost at 90% return on our investment.
Right.
Right. It goes up 6%. We're 100% return on our investment.
Right.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at this chart. There's quite a few years we've been over 7%.
Right. Well, and especially in certain areas where there's a shortage of housing, right?
Per year, right? Per year. Now, I've departed this now. Okay. I've gained equity. Right? So I have a couple of options here. I can buy a new primary with little to no money down. My career has probably changed at this point at year 1, 2, maybe 3, depending on how long I've been in that house. I'm saving money to buy that next primary. Maybe I'm now a dual income household. I have a lot more options. But I also have equity in this home. So before I depart that, I could probably go get a line of credit on that home or a home equity line and use that home equity line as a source of down payment towards the new home that I want to buy.
Yeah. So the idea here is you grow wealth in this house that you buy to start off with, and there are tools that allow you to get that money and use it to purchase additional properties, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So we're leveraging, we're using it, or like I said, we may have those reserves on the side and we just go ahead and do that based on just household lifestyle growing, right? Then I rent this home, and I rent this home at a premium than what I'm paying the mortgage on.
Right.
And that differential, I have two options with that. Number one, I can accelerate the mortgage and pay it down.
Correct.
Right? Which I always advise doing. Or number two, I could put that money into a separate checking account, which is my rental income business account that I'm going to treat that like that. And I'm collecting a dividend.
Right.
So, and if I'm comparing it to a stock, I'm making tremendous return on my investment at 3%. 50% is what that comes out to. If the home just appreciates 3%, I'm making a 50% return on my initial investment and a monthly dividend.
Right.
Name me a stock that does that right now.
Right. Yeah, you can't.
You can't.
I think the other thing also that people get concerned about is, again, prices of homes falling off a cliff. So I'm going to buy a house and immediately I'm buying at the top and it's going to fall off in a cliff. But we have to realize that is stock market mentality that people are applying to real estate. And those two worlds do not mix, because stocks, absolutely. You look at what happened with the banking crisis, right? You can wake up and you can have your stock 60% lower.
Silicon Valley Bank, right? That stock peaked at $600 a share. Today it's 41 cents a share.
Yeah.
It's like you got just the people tinkering in there, just playing Enron with it, right?
Buy the dip, baby.
Yeah, buy the dip, goes up, whatever. They got probably some stories going on Reddit right now. They're going to blow it up like GameStop. But I mean, the reality is that's going to hit zero soon, right? And then that money's gone. Those people that held that at 600, it's gone at 41.
Right.
Well, let's say the house goes backwards. I'm looking at the biggest decline on record. The biggest decline on record was at 12% in 2008. Now, I think anyone listening to this knows what happened in 2008.
Right.
That was a financial crisis caused by real estate, the only one of record, right? And I think it's so much it's in the rearview mirror, but not far enough to where I can't see it, right? So there's still so many people that are in the game and that were haunted by that and have financial scars they can see every day on their arms that they basically always think that's coming.
Well, and we haven't proven that it won't happen again. So therefore, it's always going to be what's going to happen again until we prove that.
Tremendous fear, right? So then you can say, well, that happened, right? But the reality is, if you didn't sell your home, I was one of those people. I didn't sell my home. That I didn't necessarily lose 12%. You're one of those people, you didn't sell your home, you didn't lose 12%.
Right.
You can go on and on and on. If you didn't sell it, you didn't lose it. Same concept with a stock, right? If you don't sell it, you don't necessarily lose it unless it goes to zero, then you've lost it, right?
Right.
Well, the great thing about a house is it's not going to go to zero.
Well, and the value of houses are not publicly traded. I mean, Zillow has done a good job of getting us to think about that, right? We get our monthly updates of the values and we kind of keep up with that. But
Your little green arrow up or red arrow down.
Yeah, and I mean, for the most part, people bought houses, they paid what they paid, they lived in it, and then they found out what it was worth when they wanted to go sell it when they talked to a realtor. And they had no clue in between then, typically. Right. Because they're not paying attention to it because that's not how that typically works, unlike a stock, which you're getting prices for on the minute, every business day, right?
Right. Trades, trades 8 hours a day,
right,
or 7.5 hours a day, whatever it may be, until Friday afternoon.
Right. But you just got to separate that mentality because you cannot treat real estate like it's the stock market. And and I think what we have is a whole lot of people that went through 2020 and 2021 on social media. They got into trading, they got into crypto, they watched the YouTube videos, they saw the social media accounts, and that's the only thing they know about investing because they've never bought a house. And so they apply that mentality to real estate, and it's just not an accurate thing. You cannot transfer that because, again, real estate does not move like stocks. It is every house. What's interesting about this, right? When you buy a share of stock, it's the same as every other share of stock for that company. Every single house is unique. So you can make it its own investment. Yeah. It's not going to be something that's comparable like that.
You can't renovate a stock.
Right.
I mean, you can't.
Sure.
You can't take it within your own budget and your own power and renovate a stock and go, well, I'm going to add some value to this.
Right.
You can't. You can do that to a house.
Right.
Within reason, you can do that. Of course, you can overbuild, but you can't renovate a stock.
Right.
The other thing is you also are not in control of that stock and that company. Yeah, but you're in control of that house.
Yep.
You control everything about that house. Aside from a God-willing accident, you control everything about that house.
Well, and you have insurance in that case.
You do have insurance in that case, right? Where's the insurance in the stock market when you buy that stock? And where's the insurance for that
the Fed.
Silicon Valley Bank? That's for the depositors, not for the stockholders, right?
Yeah.
So, my point is, it's hard. It's hard for us not to talk about real estate all the time and always promote it as I'm not going to use the word safe haven, but a healthy alternative to other investment vehicles right now.
Sure.
Because there are so many opportunities inside that. And, we just described a few where you could go from, primary residence down the line, a year, rental property out of that primary residence into a new into a new primary. Now, imagine this. And I feel like this is a mistake that I made. I wish I would have known this as a first-time homeowner in my early days when I had the luxury to do this. I would have bought a duplex or a quadplex.
Yeah.
I absolutely would have gone.
Meaning a 2-unit or a 3-unit or a 4-unit.
I would have bought a 3-unit or a 2-unit or a 4-unit under an FHA guideline. Again, 3.5% down.
Yep.
I've got, in a multi-unit being 4, I've got 3 other pieces of rentals inside this one property that I could rent out. I'd be in that joker for a year. I'd use that leverage to go buy a primary residence, and I would have had a 4-unit that I could rent at an FHA loan at 3.5% down. And I wouldn't, it might not be in the area where I wanted it. It might not, but I'm not going to live there forever.
Right.
I'm there for this is a liability until I turn into an asset. But guess what? Day one on a multifamily or a duplex or a triplex, that's an asset.
Yeah.
You're renting it.
Absolutely.
It's either a 50% asset, a 66% asset, or 66.6 or a 75% asset. Day one.
Right.
And then I would have moved into a primary residence. And you talk about the upgrade, and you talk about the change in lifestyle being taken off the table. There's no questioning. Oh, well, why are you moving? Well, because I'm moving out of my multi-unit into a primary residence. Oh, okay, no problem. And that to me is like one of the if it's so, that's an empowering move right there. And I think if you could get a generation, which I am absolutely encouraging,
Right.
my children to understand like this, because I think that is one hell of an opportunity
Yeah.
to make that. Now, you might have people go, well, good luck finding it. You're right. Other people have jumped into that before we even thought about it. There's almost a lot of that inventory is taken up. Doesn't mean it won't come back. Just as of right now, it is hard to find. But if you can find it, might be a great opportunity.
Well, in certain areas, if we look at the Northeast, there's a tremendous amount more of this type of property than in the Southeast, right?
Yep.
Or in the West.
Yeah, I'm going to look some up while you're talking.
Yeah, the Northeast is full of these multifamily properties, and so it's far more common to be able to do this in those areas. But it is the fastest way to grow wealth. And one thing that a lot of people don't realize is if they're concerned about, well, how could I ever afford a $400,000, a $600,000 multifamily? Well, when you go to get that loan, you get credit for the rental income on that property for all the units that you're not going to live in. So if it is a 4-unit property and the appraiser says these would all rent at $1,000, well, you got $3,000 a month times 75%. So that comes out to what, $2,500, something like that. In income, it's going to offset your payment. And anybody that typically buys something like this, I would wager to say the numbers are always going to work out to where the rent's going to outweigh your payment and you're going to live for free.
Yeah, no doubt. Charlie, I know you're sitting over there on the producer's table, but I kind of can't wait to see your expression on this when I say this. A 4-unit property, FHA loan, means you only got to put 3.5% down. Now, in every county, this is different in the United States. I'm going to use Duval where we're sitting right now, and then we'll pick a county and do it in another state. It's $1,012,900. That's the loan limit. $1,012,900.
Yep.
Now, I know some people are going, well, you might not be able to find it for $1 million, but I bet there's some areas in this town where you can. And the connecting counties are also $1,012,900 for a 4-unit property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to kind of simplify and reiterate that a little bit, if somebody wants to buy a 4-unit property in our area, they can actually go all the way up to $1 million property. And people might say, well, I could never afford that. Well, again, don't forget, you're going to get the rental income from those other units towards your loan. And you don't have to make all the money to be able to afford that. You really just need to be able to afford your fourth.
Oh, and by the way, that 3.5%, because you're like, dude, 3.5% of $1 million, that's $35,000. That can be a gift. That can come from all kinds of different places.
Right.
I mean, there is just a ton of opportunity here on that particular area that I think we just, this is why we're so high on real estate, if you may.
Yeah. If you've got a 401k that's allowed to be able to take a loan from or to pull the money out of to use. And a lot of people might look at that and go, well, I'd much rather invest in real estate with something like that. And that's a valid way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's pick another state. Let's go the opposite of the spectrum.
Let's do California.
Okay. California. Here's another one.
We'll go from the right coast to the wrong coast.
Well, there it is. So we'll take a look at it here. So in California, we'll go and say, we're just, again, same concept. Let's pick a county here. Let's just start with, I don't know, let's go to Sacramento, right? Okay. If you go to Sacramento, it's 1.468.
Yep.
So another multifamily at 1.468. Now, they're, not knowing Sacramento like I do Jacksonville, that may be unheard of. But I'm sure there's some areas, right? And my point is, you can go through this on any county anywhere.
Yep.
And the reality is there is a ton of opportunity to take advantage of this.
Yeah. Well, and the same thing when it comes to leaving the house, people go, well, I couldn't ever afford 2 houses. Right. So how would I buy a house and move on to the next one? Well, similar sort of thing here. If you are going to buy a new house and live in it, if you can get a lease on the house you own currently, 12-month lease, and you get a security deposit in the bank, then you get credit for 75% of that lease amount. So again, that's going to offset your mortgage payment on that house, and you only really have to afford one house in that case.
Yeah, and I think what the point we're trying to illustrate is there is a phenomenal amount of options that you can do inside of real estate.
Right.
There's limited amount of options you can do in the stock market and in the crypto market.
Right.
I mean, obviously, I know you can stake in crypto. Obviously, I know you can have, you can short things and go long, have puts and calls. I realize that. But I mean, at some point, you got about 5, 6, 7 things in your bag of tricks over there on that side. On this side, it's really, I'm not going to say it's endless. I'm just going to say there are a lot more than that.
Well, and on the risk tolerance thing. So, if you talk to a financial advisor, the first conversation they're going to have with you is, tell me about your risk.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, we're talking about housing is one of the least risky options. I mean, when you look at what's risky about buying a property and living in it is, okay, well, does something break? Well, there's something called a home warranty that's going to cover a lot of your major components so that you can cover your risk there. Plus, you have insurance on it. So if a tree falls on your house, great, you're not out. If the prices don't move like stock market does, so there's not this volatility of, hey, I'm going to wake up and my house is going to be worth 50% less than I bought it for. That's unheard of. We've never seen that happen unless there's some sort of, again, a catastrophic event of, a train derails in Ohio. Those property values might be a little less, but in general, that's not the case. So when it comes to investing, I know when I looked at this, how do people make the majority of their money throughout time? We see they own land. They own real estate. They invest in real estate. And so it is proven throughout time. And as Snoop Dogg says, if you don't own real estate, you don't own anything.
He probably says it another way, if I recall the quote exactly. But I'll tell you this, and he's right. Here's another thing. Here's some mistakes that landlords or investors make, right? So you buy a property, and let's say you bought this property in 2018, and now you've converted it to a rental in late 2019. What happened in 2020? Boom, we had a jump in appreciation. 21 as another jump in appreciation. All of a sudden, you start going, well, wait a minute. I could sell this home and make, anywhere from 6 figures plus, because that's what a lot of people happened, right? I could sell it and I could take that money in, and all of a sudden that big number gets in your head. Well, you just liquidated an asset. You just got rid of an asset. So that's one of the mistakes. Because a lot of renters a lot of investors don't hold the long game in mind when doing this. And so I want to talk a minute about the long game, because the long game is this. You want to talk about controlling your retirement. You want to talk about retiring independently and not worrying about, is there going to be Social Security? Is there going to be enough 401k in my bank? In my 401k account? Because here's what happens. If you got rental properties, and let's assume you have 3, and let's use the average rent here in Jacksonville, which is around $1,700, right? So $1,700 times 3 is what? Was that? Give me some
41.
That probably sounds right. Yeah, 51, right? 51. Yeah, so $5,100. The amount of money that you would have to have in an account to yield $5,100 a month. That's a lot.
Sure,
that's a whole lot. And I'm gonna venture to say that's gonna be somewhere north of 7 figures.
Yeah, you're saying basically to earn interest on that money, to get that much monthly income.
To get that much monthly income without an asset depletion, right? You don't necessarily, you could deplete your assets and get that, but I'm saying to maintain your assets.
Sell them, right?
Yeah, but meaning to maintain the
money
value in the checking account, if you may, or whatever investment tool you have in it, without depleting the base value of that, you're gonna have to have north 7 figures, right? So let's talk about this. You don't have to do anything on real estate. Once that's paid off, that's yours. Right? Once you've paid that off, that's yours. And again, you own it. The other thing is you have the ability to borrow against it again.
Right.
Or if you see another investment opportunity, borrow against it and go buy another investment opportunity. And it really is a way to control your retirement future as much as your investment future.
Right.
And I think a lot of times that's overlooked, because I think I look at, okay, where am I going to go invest where I can yield that kind of return at a very low risk proposition?
Yeah, and control with the investment, right?
Right.
You actually know what's going on. You can pick it. You see what kind of neighborhood it is. You have the ability to fix it up, all that stuff.
Yeah, and I know renters hate it when you say this, and I mean this by no disrespect, but the reality is you're using someone else's money to pay down your liabilities, right? Sure. And you're leveraging that, and that's just the harsh truth of what it is, right?
Yeah.
But that's because that market's there and it's been there for quite some time, and it's not going to go away. Renter's market, that is.
Well, and nobody should really ever get bothered by that as long as somebody's taking care of the house and creating a good place for somebody to live. It solves both of their problems,
That's
right?
correct.
It's just like a business making a profit on anything.
Well,
you don't get mad at the profit. Right. It's a service that both people are appreciating.
Right.
So.
I mean, and the other thing is, I think it's real important you made a statement, treat it like a business.
Right.
Yeah, that's why you have separate checking accounts for each property. You treat it like a business, right? And so if there's a problem, you fix it immediately. If there's something that needs to be done, you fix it immediately. Like, we were before the show we started today, I was showing you, I was like, well, we just got done landscaping one of our rental properties because the renters made mention that they wanted it to look a little nicer. So we sent someone out there right away, and that's to your point. You fix it right away. You make it the way that they want it to look, and you handle it like a business. So,
but before we wrap up, I want to share 3 books that I would recommend if somebody's interested in real estate or wants to learn more, because this is how I started to learn about it and get into it. And
I bet I can guess the first one.
I was going to say
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
There you go. Rich Dad Poor Dad's the first one. It's by Robert Kiyosaki, and it is more about how to think about all this, right? It is, whenever anybody's asked about real estate, that's typically the book they reference. The other one is The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek.
Great book.
It's less real estate, but it's like you said, it's focused on the long game. And the idea here is think long term. And if you think long term, truthfully, investing in general is a good idea. And then the last one is The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller.
Love that book.
It covers the variety of ways to invest. It's a good manual on how to do it. Gives you a lot of the tactics. And so if you had those 3 books and you read those, I think you would walk out of that and say, okay, I am pretty well versed in all of this and very comfortable compared to where I was before.
And I think we missed one critical thing in this, and I need to make sure that we're very, very, how can I say it, doing a good job of stressing this. You need to have a very good relationship with a great agent. And I think that's so overlooked. Like I look at how I acquired the properties I got. It's because I had a great real estate agent.
Right.
And I know the same thing goes for you. I can't say enough about that. You want to pair yourself with a great real estate agent and then pair yourself with a great lender.
Right.
And I think the combination of those two bring together the team, and then maybe a great property manager, and then all of a sudden you got a dynamic force there, and it's turnkey at that point. But the thing about having a great agent is they know when properties are coming on the market. They may have a distressed seller. I mean, the list goes on and on. And if you're the first call they can make, boom.
Well, and you don't have to do all the work if you have this round table of experts around you.
Right. Right. And I think that's just that's a huge thing to have, and I think it's a great team to assemble as you're getting into this, and it really makes your life easier as you look to move on to future investments.
Well, you've convinced me. I think I'm going to go invest in some real estate.
Oh, man, I know it didn't take much. I know you currently already own some, so I know that didn't take much there. So, Alex, thanks for always being on the show. I know this was a different show that we did today. We're not kind of breaking down any type of future economics and forecasts in nature, but we did get a lot of questions about this, and we did kind of get a lot of feedback online about why are you guys so into this, what's in it for you guys, and I think what's important is that nothing's in it for us. We're just passionate about this, and we want more people to understand it, because we talk to people so much throughout the days that they've missed the mark on this because it's not being thought about the right way, or it's not been brought to light about the right way. And that's what we want to encourage with this podcast today.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad I could do it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being on the show as always.
I got one more shot, I'm gonna make it. One more chance, I'm gonna take it. I meant it when I said it, now it's time for me to do it. I got one life to live, so I put my all into it, yeah.